One of the guys pointed an AK-47 in my head.
Bring out the voice of citizens who are, in most cases, in fear.
Zimbabwe's history of abductions and culture of impunity dates back to the colonial era, where nationalists like Edson Sithole, together with his personal assistant Miriam Hlanga, were kidnapped in 1975 at the Ambassador Hotel in Salisbury, now Harare, and disappeared forever. To this day, their whereabouts remain a mystery. The chilling effect of insecurity triggered by this practice is not limited to the close relatives of the disappeared, but also affects communities and society as a whole. Hence, abductions and in some cases enforced disappearances are an international crime. At independence, the then Prime Minister, Robert Mugabe, inherited colonial repression infrastructure and security apparatus continue with abductions, torture, and in some cases enforced disappearances. From the Slowela 11 in January 1985 to Rashwe Guja in 1989, abductions of individuals, political and civil society activists in the new millennium, all the way to Itai Dzamara in 2015, and now Tawanda Muchehiwa, Zimbabwe has been a cauldron of abductions, torture, and enforced disappearances. While abduction is traumatic, some abductees like Justina Mukoko, Muchehiwa are lucky to live to tell their stories. Others such as Sithole, the Slowela 11, and Dzamara were not. The sweeping crackdown against opposition and civil society activists in the run-up to the July 31 mass protests, which President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government was desperate to crush as it feared an uprising, was fierce and brutal. Government hired 50 cars from Impala car rental for the clampdown, 30 in Harare, 16 in Bulawayo, and a number in other cities. The wave of repression and terror sent activists scurrying for cover, forcing them to go underground, while some, including journalists, were arrested. Muchehiwa was caught in the dragnet. He was abducted, tortured in a horrific way. Reflecting on her husband's abduction, Shefra Dzamara had this to say.
Zvinhu zvinorwadza kuti kwakatariswa kuti government yenyu inokuchengetedzai uye government inokwanisa kutsvaga vakaita mhosva and yoregedza kuita kana action. Zvinhu zvinotirwadza kuti saka hatina kuchengetedzeka mukati meino nyika. Saka zvinhu zvinotirwadza semhuri yaKwaDzamara kuti Itai aka-abductwa and government hapana zvairi kuita nezvazvo.
It all started in Bulawayo when 22-year-old media studies student Tawanda Muchehiwa set off to a local hardware. Little did he know that danger was awaiting him at his destination. Muchehiwa is the nephew of Mdudu's Matutu, the editor of online publication Zim Live. The publication, together with another journalist, Hope Ochingono, exposed corruption in the public sector. For the state, Matutu was on the wanted list for allegedly plotting the foiled July 31 national protest over government's half-hearted commitment in fighting corruption in the public sector.
On this day, November 2, a day that is recognized by the United Nations as a day when we all must demand an end to crimes against journalists, an end to impunity for crimes against journalists. It is our prayer as a family of Tawanda Muchehiwa, and also for journalists in Zimbabwe, that the perpetrators of that vicious and violent crime against Tawanda Muchehiwa are brought to account. It's a personal plea to the authorities, to President Emmerson Mnangagwa, to do the right thing for a change and stop all persecution and all repression against journalists. Journalism is not a crime.
My captors told me that they would keep on coming after me, and they say that if I say a word about my abduction, as I'm doing right now, if I tell the world about my ordeal, they were going to come after me, and the next thing I was going to see is my coffin.
Muchehiwa was forcibly taken by a suspected ferry team from a vehicle outside a hardware store in Bulawayo and taken to a secluded place where he was tortured for 3 days and later dumped near his home in Mahachula suburb. One of the vehicles that was spotted in the CCTV footage was part of local car hire Impala car rentals fleet. The company admitted this but declined that it was involved in the abduction.
As to what happened in Bulawayo, we don't know. We will leave that to the courts. We will leave that to the police to do their investigation.
We hope that justice one day will be safe. One thing that made Tawanda Muchehiwa to relocate to South Africa is that there is no guarantee that his security is guaranteed here. So it was only prudent for him to relocate, because one thing that is striking here is that the assailants, in our view, are those that are supposed to be protecting him.
Since taking over from longtime leader Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa promised to break with the past, promising a raft of political and economic reforms as part of his re-engagement with the international community. But human rights lawyers, labor union leaders, and civic society organizations are concerned that the human rights situation in Zimbabwe has become worse under Mnangagwa's administration. Award-winning lawyer and renowned human rights defender Beatrice Mtetwa had this to say.
Regrettably, we are seeing an increase in the abductions. It's difficult to say whether it's an increase because the numbers have increased or because there's more reportage because of social media.
Labor union leader Obed Masarawure has been a victim of state-sponsored abduction for expressing the plight of rural teachers.
When they were torturing me, they were asking me stupid questions like, why are you demanding better salaries for teachers? If you are no longer comfortable with this salary, why don't you just resign? Why are you saying the government is incompetent? You should state that Emmerson Mnangagwa is the best president ever to happen to Zimbabwe, which is a big lie. And if Emmerson Mnangagwa wants to be the best president, he should just deliver. He should not force us to call him the best president. They were demanding that I resign as the president of Amalgamated Rotors of Union of Zimbabwe. But citizens have a right to organize, trade unions have a right to organize, and the state can be dictating who occupy leadership positions in our trade unions. The other fateful day, which was in January, on the 19th of January 2019, I was again abducted from my home, heavily tortured and later dumped at Harare Central Police Station. After then, I was later charged with the subverting a constitutionally elected government. And why I was abducted, citizens were protesting against the rise of the fuel prices. And the citizens had every right to express themselves because the prices were beyond their reach. Up to date, after being charged, I'm still going to court. I'm still on remand. 2 years later, there's no trial date.
The Zimbabwe Peace Project is a local civic society organization whose role is to document human rights violations and speaking truth to power. In 2008, Justina Mukoko, the organization's director, was abducted, tortured, and detained for nearly a month. She says Muchehiwa's abduction shows how Mnangagwa's government is going to gear up in perfecting a culture of impunity. It later emerged in the court papers that the current Deputy Director General of Zimbabwe's intelligence services, Walter Tafumane, was implicated in Mukoko's abduction. In Muchehiwa's case, 4 intelligence officers were allegedly involved in the abduction.
It just reminds me of when I went through this ordeal. And I think at times it's just unfortunate that we are having our young people being subjected to severe torture as what these young people have gone through. But I think at the same time, because they continually speak about wanting to criminalize the talking about abductions. And for me, obviously, it instills fear that if I can't talk about what happened to me, it's supposed to be a way of debriefing. And if I can't talk about it, it means that I remain a wounded individual who cannot let out and vent in terms of the issues affecting me. But obviously, when abductions happen, they do rekindle what I went through. And it's not something that you would wish on the next person to experience.
With opposition politics in shambles, many are now asking how long this may continue. Critics say judicial rulings in Zimbabwe are now designed to muzzle opposition politics. Just recently, senior High Court judges say the justice system in Zimbabwe had been captured.
For me, it's first and foremost Zimbabweans. What are Zimbabweans doing about this? It is them who are being abducted. It is their tax that is being looted. It is their lives that are being affected. Before the international community can come in, what are we as Zimbabweans doing about it? So first and foremost, for the international community to come in, we must also stand up and say, down with this. But what have we done with abductions? Absolutely nothing. Yes, of course, the international community should come in, but they must see us to be affected by this. They must see us to be doing something. But SADC certainly must come out to the fore and say, Zimbabwe, please, respect the rule of law.
While this started as an investigation on growing cases of abductions in Zimbabwe, it ended up with Impala as an accessory to the crime of abduction.